Good afternoon, everyone. This is Curtis Hawks with Insurance Agency Marketing Services. Thank you for attending the webinar today. And I think we've got a very exciting and important topic. We're going to be going through what are some best practices with field underwriting. We know here that it's not easy to run your business, to market, to prospect, to run those appointments. And so when you do have a client that's ready to move forward, that's the one thing is we want to make sure that goes through as smoothly and quickly as possible. And so I think we've got some good tips, tricks, best practices, et cetera, that we'll go through today to help make that underwriting process a little bit more streamlined. Before getting into that, I did want to take a couple of minutes here and talk about some of the additional ways that IAMS is here to add value to your business. So first off, we've got our new producer builders. And so if you're a new agent to IAMS and you've been with us for less than 6 months, you get automatically enrolled into our new producer builder program. You can see there I've got a variety of point totals up on the screen. And so an annuity counts dollar for dollar. Life insurance, you can take that premium and times it by 10, and that's the points that you accrue. But you can see that we've got a variety of things up there, whether it's marketing programs, trips, cash, marketing reimbursement, you name it. And all you have to do is reach out and talk to your sales director over here. That phone number is 800-255-5055. The other thing I'd mention to you as well is if you're doing something that's working really well for you and you don't see that option up here, reach out and talk to your sales director. One of the core pillars of IAMS is customization of services. In addition to that, we've got a refer producer program. If you know of an agent who maybe isn't quite happy with their current IMO relationship, or you feel like we could do a lot for them, send them our way. Not only will you get a bonus when they get contracted, but on an ongoing basis, we will send out checks based off of their production. You don't have to take care of any of the service or any of the support. And so it's a great way to generate an additional income flow for you. In addition to that, we've got our marketing reimbursement program. As you can see up there on the screen, you accrue $100 for every qualifying amount of $100,000 of indexed annuity premium. And then on the life insurance side, you accrue $200 for every $100,000 of SPL and $200 for every $10,000 of life target, which if you've got questions about how that program works, just reach out, talk to a life sales director over here. Again, the number is 800-255-5055. In addition to that, back office support, and that's actually part of what we're talking about today. We've got a really good team here, whether it's pre-sale or once a case is submitted. And so I would definitely, if you haven't tested it out, I would definitely encourage you to do that. And today, again, we're going to be doing a little bit deeper dive on the support that we have from an underwriting standpoint. We also have our IAMS website. Technology is a big theme with us, and so on the IAMS portal, there's a variety of things that you can do there, between quoting life insurance and annuities, getting annuity rates, doing e-applications. You can do paper applications on there, and we've got our sales resource library as well as sales training on the site as well. And in order to access that, you just need to be contracted with us and be registered. So if you've got questions on that, reach out, talk to a sales director over here. Again, that number is 800-255-5055. As I mentioned, technology is a big theme with us. So you can see here we integrate with a few different e-app platforms. It makes it very easy to go to one spot, the IAMS portal, and be able to do an e-application with any of the insurance carriers that we work with. And just to do a little bit deeper dive on that, you can see up here even all the carriers that we integrate with on Firelight. And then the balance of the life carriers are with iPipeline, and then you can do Medicare and MedSup applications on our CSG platform. Creative marketing solutions. Creative really is the key word there. The team does a significant amount of work for our advisors and agents. And I think one of the key benefits there is they just specifically focus on the financial services space. So you don't have to explain to them what an annuity is or how life insurance works. They understand, and so I think it makes for a much more seamless process as you're trying to develop things. And I would say now, more than ever, your brand, and especially your digital brand, is more important than it's ever been. And I think part of the reason for that is people research more online now than they ever have before. And so making sure that your brand is out there is I think, critically important to making sure that people move forward with you and do business with you. We also have IAMS Wealth Management. We've seen a continued increase in growth in the AUM space. We founded this about 5 years ago, and so Charles and the team over there do a great job. And what I would mention to you is if you've ever thought about adding AUM to your business, or maybe you're already currently licensed but not quite happy with your current relationship, reach out and talk to Duncan and Charles and the team over there, and they're more than happy to chat with you about some of the resources that they have available. We also have our Seaside Sanctuary trip coming up. Still time to qualify, right? We're closing in on the end of the year. We've got the point totals on the website, and if you want to take a look there, or you want to reach out and talk to a sales director, they can chat with you on where you stand. But we really try to we put a lot into these to really make these an experience of a lifetime, and so we're very excited about this, and we're also excited about launching our next incentive trip as well. So again, if you've got questions, reach out, talk to a sales director. Number is 800-255-5055. So I am going to pause this here for a moment, and I'm going to get our main presentation pulled up here. And as I mentioned, today's topic is going to be all about field underwriting. And with me today, I've got our resident expert, Andrea Rasser. And just to give you a little bit of background, I'm super excited that she's here. She and I were on the Horn meeting for months, and I finally was able to get her to come over here. And she brings with her just a wealth of experience and knowledge. She has been in the financial services space for over 20 years, with not only working in basically all aspects of the IMO distribution space, but has had a very major focus on underwriting. And so when you talk about experience with underwriting negotiation, experience with medical impairments, understanding medical records, tests, all those types of things, she knows those things inside and out. And I've always felt like underwriting is part science, part art. And what I mean by that is you've got to understand what you're dealing with when it comes to medical impairments, but then there's an art to underwriting negotiation and getting that underwriter to see things from your vantage point. And so in any case, we're really pleased to have her here. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you can access her and leverage her knowledge. But for purposes of today, she's going to give us a really good overview on field underwriting and what are some of the things that you should be thinking about, considering, et cetera. So, Andrea, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone, for joining. So today, we would like to take a deep dive into field underwriting and why it matters. One of the things that really stands out when it comes to field underwriting is that it's going to help you set realistic expectations regarding turnaround times, underwriting requirements, and potential outcomes. Now, obviously, a 25-year-old who's preferred plus is going to be a much faster process than a 65-year-old who's just had heart surgery in the last year. So this is what I mean by setting expectations. You want your clients to know exactly what kind of timeline you're working with, what kind of things are going to be required of them, and how this is going to turn out. Not everybody's going to be preferred plus. It's going to expedite the underwriting process. Anything that you can provide up front is something that the underwriters are not going to have to come back for. So the more that you can provide, the better it's going to be for both you and your client in the long run. With this being said, it's going to reduce the need for additional underwriting requirements. You may answer questions that help avoid needing an APS, and that can save weeks. It will also ensure that your conditional receipt is actually binding. You don't want to bind coverage just to find out 4 days later after the application's been scrubbed that they don't qualify. That's something that, if a client wants their conditional coverage, we want to be able to ensure that that is something they can have. And last, proper quoting is going to lead to a higher placement ratio on your end. There is absolutely nothing worse than having to resell a policy on the back end due to inaccurate quoting on the front end. If you're able to tell a client the first meeting that, they're probably going to be standard, maybe a rated case, that's something that's a lot easier to talk about up front than after you've already told them they're preferred plus and have to now explain why it's going to be more expensive. So I'd like to look at a couple case examples, kind of show you what we deal with on a daily basis, things we've run into here recently that are just good examples of where front-end underwriting might have made a big difference. So the first one was a female, age 70, non-tobacco user. Agent quoted her preferred. Agent wrote an application based off of a spreadsheet. He went in, ran it preferred, found the cheapest rate, and that's who we went with. Now, this young lady had breast cancer in the left side in September of 2011. 7 years later, August 2018, there was additional breast cancer discovered in the right breast. Now, the agent assumed preferred would probably be fine because they were both stage 0. Now that's wonderful. We're glad it was stage 0. But unfortunately, many carriers are going to decline this automatically just due to the fact that there were 2 separate cancers. They don't really care that it was stage 0. To reoccurring cancer is a lot of times going to be a decline. However, we dug a little deeper. We discovered there was no lymph node involvement. There was no evidence of reoccurrence in any of her follow-ups. At this point, we shopped the case. We did have 7 of our top carriers decline this case due to the reoccurrence. That, unfortunately, is hard to find coverage for. However, we were able to find 1 offer at Table B and 1 offer at Standard. This case did eventually get placed after we had to pivot, move companies, take a second app. In the end, it was a positive outcome, but we could have made this a lot easier for both the client and the agent had we looked at it on the front end. Case example 2. We have a female, age 23, non-tobacco user, seemingly healthy, looks perfectly healthy. Agent quoted preferred. There was no indication on the application of any health concerns at all whatsoever. However, when this went to underwriting and the Milliman report came in, it was discovered that the client was diagnosed with Wilson's disease in 2006. Now, Wilson's disease is a disease that it causes excess copper accumulation in your bloodstream, and this can lead to liver and brain damage. So it is kind of a big deal. It's not typically something you're going to see preferred with, but the agent did quote preferred because, again, there was no indication of any health concerns on the application. She is taking a daily pill. She's non-symptomatic, so that's wonderful. But ultimately, the case was, in fact, declined by the original carrier. We went ahead and shopped this out. I'll be honest, this was a situation I hadn't seen before. Wilson's disease is pretty rare, and I wasn't sure what to expect, and we did see other declines. There were a few other carriers that declined. However, we had 3 carriers that came in Table D, and 1 carrier out of our entire list came in at preferred best. So to believe that everybody was going to decline would be false. It's easy to jump to conclusions when you see the details of an ailment, but not every carrier is the same, and we did place it at preferred best at the end of the day after extra research, extra shopping, and again, we had to pivot and move the case, which we could have avoided had we shopped it up front rather than on the back end.
Well, and I know the point you're trying to make is just kind of giving some examples, but that's one of the reasons why I'm really glad that we've been able to bolster what we can do from an underwriting standpoint. Because,
absolutely.
I had in advance of this webinar, I'd asked Andrea to put together some cases, and there was a laundry list of cases already that she's been able to make an impact on. And so that's why we're so excited to have her here, because I really feel like she can be a really good resource for all of you when it comes to, I've got a case, but we've got this or that. And then even in this last scenario, wasn't an inclination of anything, we can come in there on the back end and then still see, okay, well, how do we get to yes? How do we get the case to yes? So, well, perfect. So I'll didn't mean to.
No, please, absolutely. Yep. So, what's this mean for you? Where do you start? So, from a high level, the things you're going to really want to look for as you're meeting with a client for the first time. What is their occupation? What is their annual income? What is their net worth? Obviously, that's going to matter for all of your financial justification and financial underwriting. You're going to want to know if they've ever been rated or denied for any kind of life, long-term care, or other insurance in the past, and why. We need to determine what's changed or how we can address that why if they do have previous declinations. You'll want to find out if they've already owned any life insurance, and if so, what's the face amount? Are they replacing it? You know, carriers are very careful about not over-insuring clients, so this is why this matters. You'll want to know what the purpose is of the life insurance being applied for. Is this business? Is this personal? What exactly are they trying to accomplish? This answer will help determine what financials may be available once underwriting gets started.
That's a good point, because that does, if it's personal or business, there can be different sets of stuff that wouldn't automatically populate if you're doing an app.
Absolutely. And I've seen many times where a client may be overinsured on the business side, but they have zero on the personal side. And we can sometimes pivot these to a personal policy that's still being utilized for business purposes. Some of the other things to keep in mind as you're meeting with the clients, you're going to want to find out if they have any medical issues. Now, this is an area that you might have to really dig for an answer, because clients are notorious for being perfect. They feel fine. There's nothing wrong, because everything that happened in the past is no big deal, and so they just think they're okay. You're going to want to see if they travel outside of the U.S., if they're foreign nationals, and the carriers are going to want to know. They're going to want to know where they're going, they're going to want to know how often, and they're going to want to know for how long. There are multiple countries that are not considered safe and will result in a decline. There are many, many other countries that you can go to as often as you want. It's not going to matter. But that's something they're definitely going to dig into. You're going to want to look into their avocations. Do they participate in aviation? Do they scuba dive? Do they climb? Do they race cars around tracks, or any other, similar activities? I have to tell you a little story here. Not every avocation is going to be on an application. However, if you're aware of them, you should still let your underwriter know. I think one of my favorite cases ever was a gentleman that worked for the circus, and he was able to, avoid all the checks, all the boxes for avocation that were on the application. However, when they asked about his job duties, we found out that he was the guy that stuck his head in the mouth of the lion, and that was a big deal. That was a little bit harder to cover than we thought, and it was not on the application. So if that's, if you're talking to a guy that works for the circus, you might want to find out what he's doing. And those are good items to put in the comment section of the application, so that we can address those right away. And then, of course, moving violations, anything on a client's MVR, specifically DUIs, suspensions, revocations, things like that are going to be the bigger issues. A little speeding ticket here and there, not a huge deal, but they still want to know about it. And it's important to be upfront with those things right off the bat.
So, you talked about the circus thing, and that's not on there. But,
nope.
I would tell you it's probably not uncommon that, we're talking about some high-level best practices here, but it's probably not uncommon that these agents come across different things that maybe they're not quite sure of. I mean, that's where they need to give you a call, talk to their sales director. and let's talk through it so that way we can get the right plan of action going forward.
Definitely.
Okay, well, and I'm gonna pause right here just because we got a question that came in here. Which, by the way, as Andrew is going through this, if you've got a question, go ahead and type it in, and then we'll address those as we go. But the question is, how do we know how to place cases if we're only appointed to a few insurance companies? Well, let me touch on this for a moment. I think one of the nice things about what Andrea is going to do is if we've got a case that you're working on, she's not just going to look and say, okay, you've got company A, B, and C, so let's just send it out there. She's actually going to go look at the market and look at who makes the most sense, and then we'll come back to you with, okay, here's the whole report, and here's where we think you've got the best shot with the case. And then the nice thing from a licensing standpoint is we do integrate with SureLC, so we make it really easy. In fact, the contracting team can even go request the carrier appointment, so there's not a ton that you've got to do on that, but definitely a good question.
So the biggest thing that we run into in underwriting, and the first thing most people think of, is obviously medical histories. Those other items do matter, but medical histories tend to be the bulk of underwriting concerns. So as you're developing these medical histories, it's important to obtain the dates of any diagnosis, no matter how long ago those might have been. I realize a lot of time people think it's no big deal because it's in the past, but it does matter, and underwriters are going to look at it no matter how long ago it's been. I always recommend getting completed testing details, anything that they've had done, the dates, the results, and if you know there's plans for future testing, we're going to want to know about that as well. I would say it's important to always obtain current and past treatment details, how it was treated, how long it was treated, when treatment ended, if treatment's still ongoing, and include a list of all the current and past medicines. A medication they quit taking 6 months ago, you might think doesn't matter, but it can make a big difference because a lot of medications come with side effects, and those are looked at very closely as well. I would also recommend that you ask about any referrals, any specialists that they've seen. One major change we've seen over the past 20 years, 25 years, I'm kind of aging myself there, but one of the things we've seen is that agents used to complete the Part 2 when they sat down and did the application, and they got a pretty good feel for what was going on with the client and their history. Anymore, that's not the case. The carriers have kind of taken over this task, and the Part 2 or the non-medical is not something agents see or do as often. However, I would implore you to please take a proactive role in obtaining that information. It's going to save you a lot of time on the back end if you know what you're dealing with on the front end. And the more we can give those underwriters, the less they have to come back and ask, and the faster that you're going to get through the system. One other thing that I would mention here is that there's a very big difference in the way clients and physicians look at medical histories as compared to underwriters. This would be referred to as mortality versus morbidity. A client may think everything's fine now. They've taken all their meds. They've gone through whatever treatment they're supposed to. They're asymptomatic. They feel wonderful. Everything's great. They don't even need to go back and see the doctor. This is what we call morbidity. Morbidity is the state of being symptomatic or unhealthy due to a disease or a condition. And these are the things doctors look at. They want to treat the symptom, and they just want to make the patient feel better. Underwriters, however, look at this from a mortality standpoint. And just because you feel better does not mean that your mortality was unaffected. Just because you feel better doesn't mean that your health can't change. Those past medical histories can still have a major impact on your mortality, and that is the portion that underwriting is looking at. And so I know a lot of A lot of clients can get very frustrated when their doctor says, oh, great, everything's wonderful, and they feel wonderful, and an underwriter comes back and says, well, you're not preferred plus. That's unfortunately something we run into all the time, but it's just important to know how they are looking at that from very, very different perspectives.
Yeah, and I think, on the medical history, I know with the agents that I talk to, I think oftentimes that's kind of an uncomfortable thing for them to, they've got somebody, the person understands the concept, they understand the need, they're ready to move forward on it, and now we've got to ask these medical questions. And I think sometimes there's a concern that, oh, gosh, is this going to derail my sale because I'm asking these medical questions? I mean, do you have any maybe talking points or anything around that?
I would just, again, if you're doing the fact finders up front, you're finding out in advance that these things are going to come up. That's going to make it more comfortable if you have to go back for additional information, not feeling so blindsided, It's important to develop that relationship and be able to talk freely. I mean, you have their future in your hands.
Yeah.
And so it's important that there be transparency there. If it's something you're not comfortable talking to your clients about, make sure you talk to your paramed examiner and have them kind of dig into that. There have been situations where I've gotten on the phone with the client myself because an agent wasn't comfortable talking to a client about their very personal history, and that's completely understandable as well. I know there's some things that people just don't want to talk about, but it has to happen. Somebody has to do it.
Yeah, well, and I think what we found, and certainly with the work that you've done, is it's always better to address it up front than you get all the way down the path and then we've got an adverse offer.
Absolutely.
And now we've got to try and figure out, okay, how do we pivot, where do we go, et cetera. And, that I think sometimes can create an opportunity where the client just says, well, you know what, I just don't want to mess with it. And, the alternative would be if we can get that up front, then we get down and we get the offer that we thought we were going to get the policy issued, get it out the door. So we had another question pop up, and I know this is just kind of a general question, right, not details, but the question was on diabetes. For type 1 or type 2 diabetes, generally speaking, do you find that there's some carriers that are maybe more or less favorable on that?
I do. I've got a couple favorites. I don't know if I should be talking about carriers in particular on this or not.
Yeah, go for
but John Hancock, I will say, is one of our absolute best when it comes to diabetes. They do not have, unfortunately, published guidelines that are very easy to access, but they typically will come in the most competitive when I do have a diabetic. The other thing I will say with type 1 diabetes, we have a lot of carriers that will decline if you were diagnosed under a certain age. I've had people that were 6 or 7 when they were diagnosed, and everybody will decline except for Prudential. Prudential is very, very good with the young age diagnosis.
Yeah.
Makes a big difference.
So we got another question in that's around how to streamline the APS process, and doctors' offices are not easy to work with, but no. I do think that's a good example of kind of what you talked about right here, because I guess the normal process is the application goes into the insurance company, the carrier looks and orders, if they're going to be an exam or it's accelerated underwriting or what have you, and then ultimately the underwriter decides, do we need an APS or not? Well, that could be a couple, 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks, and if they need an APS, then all of a sudden we've got to order it and everything.
Right.
Well, I would imagine that there are medical impairments that if you know as well, that your first case scenario, if you have got a reoccurrence of breast cancer as an example, we're going to know up front that we're going to need to order an APS.
Correct.
So then why wait for the underwriter when we can just get it going right now? And that can, I think, make a big impact. I mean, do you have any other thoughts?
No, I think that can be a huge time saver. And again, if the underwriter is provided with enough detail regarding the treatment, regarding the medications, regarding any testing that's been done, you can sometimes avoid an APS altogether. especially with carriers that are working with the LexisNexis or Milliman. If what we're telling them on the parameds matches what they're seeing in LexisNexis, they might avoid that APS altogether. Whereas if we hadn't answered the question or hadn't answered it thoroughly, and they see something on LexisNexis, they're going to automatically add an APS. And so it can easily help us avoid one in some situations if we're detailed enough.
Okay.
And just to go over some of the ways that IAMS can help, we are here to pre-screen these cases. You can contact me anytime. I'm available via phone. My email address is on the screen. I'm happy to go over an insured's history and narrow down exactly who that best carrier is going to be, given their unique needs. Not all carriers are created equal. I promise you that, well, you saw in the case examples, we had everything from declines to preferred best on the same exact client. And that happens all the time with multiple impairments. That was just one example. We see them every single day. So definitely never, ever hesitate to reach out if you're just not sure. We can send out quick quotes and shop those. I can do informals. I can summarize APSs, and so there are lots of ways that we can tackle that right up front. Working side by side with your IAMS sales director on advanced case design is another way that we can make a big difference in the very beginning, making sure that we find the right carrier to meet the needs. And we have health questionnaires. There's this NAILBA guide. It's amazing. It has well over 100 plus impairments that, if you find that your client has heart disease, as an example, or a cancer history, there are questionnaires that we can pull from NAILBA and have the client review, fill those out, get those back to me, and then we can shop those. We also have a high-level fact finder, now available on our website. It kind of goes over a little bit of everything. It's a great, great starting point for that first meeting or even before the first meeting. So I would definitely recommend utilizing those in order to get a good idea of what you're walking into before you meet with that client and take that app for the first time.
Well, one additional point I'd mention on this health screening questionnaire, because to your point, it's a really good starting point. I think it's good to just have that with you, and it can kind of give you a track to run on with it. So it is on the website, and where you're going to find that is on the life section. So when you go to products and you click on life and you scroll down, we're going to have a module there that says health screening questionnaire, and that's where you can download that.
Some of the other things we can do, I have many, many times sat down and prepared detailed cover letters. A good cover letter, this is your introduction of the client to the company. It's especially helpful with health histories and unique financial situations. It can help explain things in ways that the application just doesn't. And it could make the difference between this being a bumpy ride and you getting 100 questions back from the underwriter versus it's smooth sailing just right through the underwriting process. You tell the story. Now the underwriter, kind of has a better example or idea of what's happening. And that's something I am more than happy to help you prepare if it's something you're not comfortable with or just not sure where to start. Other things that we are doing right now is we are proactively, I review every case upon submission throughout the underwriting process for any red flags and any declines or rated cases. Every single one of those comes across my desk and I review them. Sometimes it's a quick at a glance and I can tell this is an amazing offer. And other times I can tell this is not an amazing offer and we can definitely do better elsewhere and shop for alternatives. That is happening whether you request it or not. We just do it And if I see something that stands out, I will absolutely reach out and let an agent know so that he has the best possibility of placing that case.
Very good. So we've got a couple things here. So one, make sure you're following us on LinkedIn and Facebook. And also be on the lookout on our emails, because that's how we get information out on webinars and maybe updated guides. We've got, I think, some really neat things in the works from an underwriting standpoint that we're going to be rolling out here as we go into next year. And so this is a great way to make sure you keep your finger on the pulse of that. Secondly, I'll get our information up here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to launch our poll for today. And if you'd like more information on what we talked about today, go ahead and check yes, and we'll have one of the sales directors reach out to you. But at the end of the day, our goals are aligned with yours. We know it's a lot of work to get those cases in, and we want to make sure that we're helping you do that. And so I'm just committed to making sure that we're getting the right resources there for you, whether it's going out and finding Andrea and getting her to come over here, or getting more questionnaires or sales resources, etc. That's what we're going to do. So for everybody on the call today, I really appreciate you taking some time with us. And you know what? I almost was wrapping up and I almost forgot to mention this, but this is going to be the first of a series as we talk about new things. So we're going to have Andrea on each month, and we started with field underwriting, but what she's going to be doing is doing a deep dive into different common underwriting topics on the best way to navigate those. So be on the lookout for those. That's why, like I said, I mentioned the social media and our email. So we'll be having another one of these here as we go into December. And Andrea, I appreciate you taking some time with us today to share some knowledge.
Thank you so much. Look forward to doing it again.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Hope you have a good rest of the day.